I'm Ron Paul. I'm a congressman from Texas, serving in my 10th term. I am the champion of the Constitution.
Gentlemen.
Hidden power, secrets, cover-ups, corruption. You think you know the whole story? Think again. I've been governor, a Navy SEAL, a fighter. I've heard things that'll blow your mind, and now I think it's time you get the whole story.
Welcome back to Larry King Live. We're talking politics and other news of the day with Rod Blagojevich, Ron Paul, Stephanie Miller, and Andrea Tantaros. Well, you know, my problem with Sarah Palin, well, first let's get to Gingrich there. How can he make a statement, this is the most radical president in the history of the United States? Was he around 200 years ago to know what the president...
Well, Barack Obama took us to a war as well, but I think George Bush...
Excuse me, what war did Barack Obama take us to?
War.
Wait a minute. Afghanistan and Iraq were both started under the Bush administration. How can you possibly say that Barack Obama took us to a war?
Well, he's continued a war.
Well, because it was fed to him. What's he supposed to?
So you don't think we should be there?
Hey, I stand with Ron Paul. When you say we marched in, let's march out. That was a great answer. Am I right, Representative Paul?
Yep, that's what I think it is. That's not too much more complicated than that.
And I want to tell you that that kind of isolationism, sir, is what caused World War II. We allowed Hitler to come to power with that kind of attitude of isolationism and appeasement.
Okay. You know, it's rather ironic that he would call me an isolationist, because in many ways we have drifted into a neo-isolationism, because we have less friends now around the world than ever before, a lot more enemies, and we go it alone. And it's because we've accepted this principle of starting the wars, preemptive wars. So it's rather sad, and yet our policy, which means that we would bring our military back and open up the doors and talk to people and trade with them and remove sanctions, I think there would be so many positive things come from that, and we would not be isolationists. We would be very much engaged in the world.
Let's remember, I stand for freedom. Let me give it to you this way, Donnie. If America is changing because of the war on terrorism, then the terrorists are winning. Because we may be beating them on the battlefield, but if we're getting our freedoms taken away and America changes because of what terrorisms do, the fear of terrorism, and government there to protect us, well, then, in my opinion, the terrorists are winning.
But Jesse, you have to admit, if we don't do something, the reality is terrorism is a new kind of war, and it's nothing we've faced in our over 200-year history, and some things have to be done different. This is a different kind of enemy, and to put your head in the sand and say, we can't change anything, I just think it's ignorant.
Wait a minute. Nobody's putting their head in the sand. We're as ill-prepared for terrorism as we've ever been. Take a look at the hurricanes that just hit this country. They were even announced 3 to 4 days ahead of time. Okay. Now, when the terrorists hit us, do you think they're going to send us a memo?
But the surge really hasn't worked. There's less violence, but al-Sadr has essentially won in the South. The British are leaving. The brigade of al-Sadr now is in charge, so they are getting their country back. So let the people have their country back again. Just think of the cleaning up of the mess after we left Vietnam. Vietnam now is a friend of ours. We trade with them. The president comes here. What we achieved in peace was unachievable in 20 years of the French and the Americans being in Vietnam. So it's time for us to take care of America first.
No one's going to have the hell the world has ever seen. Biggest thrill for me was when we hit.
You know, I don't have a lot of respect for Dick Cheney. Here's a guy who got 5 deferments from the Vietnam War. Clearly he's a coward. He wouldn't go when it was his time to go, and now he's a chicken hawk. Now he's this big tough guy who wants this hardcore policy, and he's the guy that sanctioned all this torture by calling it enhanced interrogation.
Do you think Rush Limbaugh's a better Republican than Colin Powell?
No. Not at all. In fact, if you compare the two, let's look at Colin Powell, who's a war hero, who strapped it on for his country and didn't run and hide. And then you look at Dick Cheney, who ran and hid. Well, I have no respect for Dick Cheney.
But the big bank
banking power structure seems to have control because they're on the inside and they have control of money and they know what policy is going to be down the road.
Can you specify this structure, you're talking about this power structure?
Well, the power structure basically is made up of a lot of very powerful business and corporate leaders in the country. And in particular, they have formed their organizations. They've been around for a good while, and they don't even hide it anymore. You know, the Trilaterals Commission, as well as the Council of Foreign Relations. No matter which president, which party is in power, they will appoint to the major offices members of these two committees. And they always have control of the Federal Reserve System. So the Wall Streeters, the big bankers, have inside information as far as what is happening and what's going on. And control over money is pretty significant, because if you can control money, you're really controlling 1/2 of every single transaction. So that is a tremendous amount of power.
If you're also not aware, 1 month after I took office, I was requested to the basement of the Capitol, where I was interrogated by 23 members of the Central Intelligence Agency, and I was the governor. I went, because being a former military, you kind of feel obligated. You don't know what it's really about. I walked into the room, and they put me in a chair at the end, and they were in a big half circle around me, and they interrogated me.
Some breaking news about Senator Rand Paul, the son of presidential candidate Ron Paul, detained by the TSA at the airport in Nashville. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell live on Capitol Hill with the details. What have you been able to find out, Kelly?
Well, aides say that Senator Rand Paul called them to let them know he was unable to get on his flight to come back here to D.C. This happened in Nashville. What they describe is that the senator went through the full body scan imaging, and that the alert was sounded, and they say it had to do with his right leg. He claims he has no medal, nothing that should have set off the alarm. He called it a glitch. They tell me that he lifted his pant leg to show that there was no medal there, but their procedure is that he would have to undergo a pat-down, and Rand Paul has been publicly very critical of pat-downs, believing those are an invasion of privacy. He declined to do that. In their words, they say he was detained by the TSA and is unable to fly.
So it's simpler for the government to simply deny us our constitutional rights and deny us our day in court. I will tell you this, I have lost my patriotism. It's gone. And I say that with a deep heart, because I never thought that Jesse Ventura would say that he has no more patriotism left, because they've stripped me of it by not allowing me to have a day in court with a jury to determine if my Fourth Amendment rights are being violated.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last nail is being driven into the coffin of the American Republic, yet Congress remains in total denial as our liberties are rapidly fading before our eyes. The process is propelled by unwarranted fear and ignorance as to the true meaning of liberty. It is driven by economic myths, fallacies, and irrational good intentions. The rule of law is constantly rejected, and authoritarian answers are offered as panaceas for all our problems. Runaway welfareism is used to benefit the rich at the expense of the middle class. Who would have ever thought that the current generation and Congress would stand idly by and watch such a rapid disintegration of the American Republic? Characteristic of this epic event is the casual acceptance by the people and the political leaders of the unitary presidency, which is equivalent to granting dictatorial powers to the president. Our presidents can now, on their own, order assassinations, including American citizens, operate secret military tribunals, engage in torture, enforce indefinite imprisonments without due process, order searches and seizures without proper warrants, gutting the Fourth Amendment, ignore the 60-day rule for reporting to the Congress the nature of any military operation as required by the War Power Resolution, continue the Patriot Act abuses without oversight, wage war at will.